If I'd met you when you were 13 and I'd said, what do you want to be when you grow up, what would you have said?
I suppose something heroic.
Yeah.
That might have involved either exploration or war or risk-taking of some kind.
Did you have heroes?
Yeah, they were the usual. I mean, Biggles, obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
And the people who'd come to school with their lectures. Did you have that? The fellow who'd been up the Zambezi.
Yes, there was a bit of that.
They were
fantastic.
I don't know where they go. The careers advisor could get you on that path. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah. What do you want to do when you grow up? Well, first of all, I'd like to have been born 100 years ago. That's the first thing. The sort of Shackleton heroics were, I suppose, were in my mind. But then, I don't think the careers officer actually had a leaflet for that when I was there. No.
And was there room for anything else apart from rowing? Because I know by the time that you were at university, you're looking at it's 8 hours a day or thereabouts.
It's a lot, yeah.
But you got into it pretty heavily at school. Was there room? Did you still do the acting? Did you still do other stuff on the?
Not much.
What's that like then? Because I'm not single-minded. I'd never had that single-mindedness. How do you get into it? Because you must care. You give an impression of falling into it or following your dad into it, but there must have been a pretty superhuman level of dedication involved.
It's pretty addictive, I must say.
And that's endorphins as much as anything else,
I suppose it is endorphins, but there's something about not just the physical demands of it. There's something about winning a rowing race that is unlike winning anything else that not that I've won a lot of other things, but the few things that I have didn't come close to the feeling you get from winning a rowing race. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I had a theory at one time that it's because you're facing backwards. So you're watching the person you're beating, whereas runners leading an Olympic race, for example, they always have that they look like slightly neurotic horses coming up the last, the home straight. They've got who's coming past me, who's coming past me.
Can't look over.
Where is it? Exactly?
Because then I'll slow down.
Exactly. And their eyes go wide and they look absolutely terrified. Whereas you kind of know when you've got a rowing race in the bag. You sort of know when you've broken them, actually, to be, sort of brutal about it. That's what it amounts to. You kind of think, I've actually...
That makes sense.
I've made you give up. I've made the other crew give up, which is quite a good feeling.
What was it like to lose?
That's less pleasant.
But also, you can't see the winner, so it must
you cannot. You can hear them, though. You can completely hear them. That's the awful thing.
And cheering.
But my dad coached me... Not very often, but he did for a couple of weeks. I remember there was a race we lost, and we were very despondent about it. And I remember him saying, "Always remember, any idiot can win." And he wasn't much given to these sort of gnomic pronouncements, but that was a particularly good one, I thought. What he meant was that winning doesn't really teach you anything. You can go through, if you're a constant winner, you go through life without ever really being touched by anything, without ever learning anything or reconfiguring yourself. Whereas if you lose, it forces you to examine yourself and think about what you could have done better and how hard you're prepared to exert yourself to make sure it doesn't happen again. He's
right, isn't he?
He is. He was and he is, yeah.
You mentioned that your dad was a GP. He also, I mean, were you conscious from quite an early age of his sporting prowess? I'm trying to. What were the?
No, that was another thing that was concealed from me. Yes, very much so. I remember my parents laughing a lot because we were in a boat. We'd gone fishing, and we were in a boat, and my dad took the oars, and I said to my mother, "Does he know how to row?" And they laughed, and I said, "What are you laughing at?" And they didn't tell me. Till years later, I realised he'd actually won an Olympic gold medal for that. Not in a fishing boat, but you know,
At the 1948 London Games.
48 Olympics, and he'd also rowed at the 36 Olympics in Berlin.
Gosh,
he actually saw Jesse Owens jump and beat Lutz Long in the long jump.
And you knew none of this?
I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't.
Why is that? I see the word Presbyterian. I'm never entirely sure what that means, but it does usually involve not boasting and thinking.
Yeah, that is the principal credo. I think is just not boasting. They treated modesty as a sort of martial art. It was I can out-modest you. And yes, you're right. Presbyterian is sort of bandied about fairly loosely, but they did, in as much as they were church-going, they went to the Church of Scotland in Oxford, where we lived at the time. So yes, I suppose they were Presbyterian by temperament rather than faith.
So if we early amateur psychology, you would be discouraged from showing off in any way.
Absolutely forbidden. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely forbidden.
And yet.
And yet, that's pretty much what I do for a living. You're right. It doesn't make any sort of sense.